Okay, so what I'm doing tomorrow, it's called a wrap up, but we had to change the schedule. So it's the wrap up that happens before the last workshop. But we're going to talk about being synchronous online. And I taught 22 classes, my news production class this quarter online, synchronous. So I have a couple of things to share about that. And the other thing is, what is JACC doing? Our upcoming stuff. I've been getting emails about what are we doing for a fall conference. We're doing something, I hope, and changing contests, and also some good news about a partnership that JACC is starting. So there's just a lot of things that I want to let the membership know about, and I won't go too crazy talking about my own experience. Synchronous online, but wow, Nancy, oh my gosh, clap, clap. You sure brought me some new ideas. That's great. Thank you.
Good. And you're still breathing. Good.
Yeah, and also too, we will be having some happy hours before most of us head back. And that'll be, we can do it thematically, or we can just do it open forum kind of thing. So watch our social media channels, watch the listserv. And I certainly hope that you'll join in, because I think the more the merrier. I just realized, Nicole, you're on here twice. Do you have a twin? A clone?
And also I want to, because we're about to start the next session again, if you want to step away for a second, we're probably going to start it just a few minutes late, because the panelists, I gave them my link and now they are all stuck as I've been cloned 5 times. So before we start on the next session, Marianne, I gave them my link, but is there a link that a general link for the meeting that we can?
Yeah, I'll send it to you.
Or even if you drop it into the chat right now, four panelists are here.
Grab it and I'll post it in there.
Great. And then panelists, what you can do is copy the link, make sure you copy it, and then
can I interrupt? They can rename themselves.
Can they?
Okay, yeah, just go to your 3 dots and like on your own profile photo there. Like if
it won't let us.
I think what it's doing is because they came in under
as you.
Yeah,
okay, sorry.
Yeah, I had to change that. All right, let's see.
Yeah, so panelists, what you can do is either being Nancy Kaplan Beagle, or you can copy the link, get out of Zoom, and join a meeting with that link.
Okay, here's the link. I'm going to post it right now. I can my window. All right, there's the link.
Great.
Well, it's HTTPS. I know. Hang on, it didn't copy the whole thing.
Or you guys just put the H and the T in there.
No, you know what? I didn't. I had my my notepad was off the screen, and I didn't grab the whole HTTPS. Yeah. I'll get it here. There we go.
Just say, I love Marianne's background right now. I just so want my life to be organized.
Yeah, because it's certainly not what's behind me.
Yeah, I understand, and I'm very careful this is angled so that you can't see my dining room table, which is that way, and a complete and utter mess. Okay, Josh, you're not doing anything with the link. The 4 panelists for the next session, I gave them my link, and so when they came into the room, they were immediately labeled as me, and they can't change it. So they're going to use that new link. Yay! Here comes Raymond.
Okay, there's Raymond, and he's admitted. There's the doorbell.
Hello, RJ. You probably can't hear me yet.
Oh, okay, let's see. Rename. The gentleman with the beanie on, what's your name? What's your name?
Christian.
Christian. Christian.
Yes, ma'am.
Now you're named Christian.
Oh, good. And there's Olivia, too.
Where's Olivia? Let's see.
The other Nancy Kaplan Beagle.
I'm looking for her. Oh, I see her. There you go, Olivia.
Okay, and then And Raymond, should I call you Raymond or RJ for this?
I just put it in as Raymond. I think that's fine.
Okay. And Kathleen, do you want to go by Kat or Kathleen?
Either is fine.
Kathleen, please.
Okay. I'm sorry, what did you say?
It was
Kathleen?
Oh,
No,
there's
there's-
two Kathleens.
Yeah, there's
so-
two Kath.
Kathleen? Okay.
You want to put me
So-
in Kat just to make it easier.
Okay,
Okay,
I'll make you
I'll-
Kat. How's that?
Okay.
There you go.
Okay. And Raymond, if I slip up and call you RJ, please forgive me. He's my former student, and so is Olivia. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get started, you guys, with our next workshop. And so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen again, and whoops, and go to the front. And Marianne, for this one, if you are okay monitoring the chat, that would be awesome. And you can interrupt if there's something that somebody's asking.
Okay.
Guys, wait.
I said okay.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, so this session is called Motivating Staff to Write News. And it came out of, I think, some of our experiences this semester when we had like our little happy or social hour on Zoom, or just conversation with other advisors, that it was really, at least for my students, but I've heard other people say this too, it was really tough leaving our newsrooms mid-March and then being hit with, the intensity of the world, and it has not abated. And at least for my students, I can only really super speak to my students. For the first month, they were really, they were struggling. They were really committed to the skyline view, super committed. And they really wanted that connection. And they definitely wanted to feel a part of things. And they were great with that. They were super reliable and showing up to our meetings, et cetera. But it was really challenging for them that first month to write news. And I was in the background going, okay, you guys, this is your Super Bowl. No, this isn't your Super Bowl. This is your Olympics. This is the story of a lifetime. How come you're not getting out there and doing these stories? And it was just really challenging to get them to want to write news. They started off doing opinion pieces. They were willing to do things where they couldn't leave the room, but where they didn't even have to, try to get hold of somebody. So that was super challenging. So that's some of the genesis of this workshop. And we've got panelists who are out there doing this right now and have hopefully been more successful at motivating their staff to write news than I was this semester, post-COVID. So here are our panelists. Christian, can you introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Christian Trujano. I'm the executive editor for this.
Can you unmute?
Can you not hear me? Hello?
I can hear him.
I can hear you.
All right, cool. Yeah, so my name is Christian.
Well, you can? Okay.
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 Okay. I'm with the San Jose State Spartan Daily newspaper. I was the news editor last semester, kind of right when COVID-19 hit. I was really in the whole, I would say mess of it, but yeah, it was especially hard for me as news editor last semester, having to deal with the whole pandemic and getting students to report. So yeah, hopefully I can,
So Christian, I think you are breaking up a little bit.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if you can hotspot yourself.
Yeah, here, I'll try again, but you can go ahead and move on. I'll see if it's with my Wi-Fi.
And Marianne, can you hear him?
Yeah, you're the one that's breaking up for me. I can hear him fine.
Oh. Okay, so then, yeah, that's pretty much me though. I have nothing much else to say other than I hope I can share some insight and help everybody out here today. And she's gone.
She'll be back.
Okay.
So Olivia, you're next.
Hi, my name is Olivia. I'm also a part of the Spartan Daily at San Jose State. And I was a copy editor last semester, and I'll be managing editor this coming semester.
Okay, Christian,
Hi.
want to tell us, we don't have the slide up. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. I am a former Laveau's student, so I started back in 2017, late fall. I've been basically, I guess Cecilia can kind of agree with this. I am a huge news hound, so I am 100% a news reporter by heart. I've been covering a lot here in San Jose. I was one of the people on the ground here when the protests first started happening, especially the one downtown San Jose, where like there was all those crazy fires and all the rubber bullets from San Jose police. I actually got hit by a rubber bullet, which was pretty fun. And yeah, the tear gas and everything. So hopefully I can talk a little bit more about wanting to get people out there right now. And yeah, I've also been an intern with the Palo Alto Weekly, and it's pretty much all that I have.
Okay, well,
Hey,
Nancy's back. So
I'm back.
So we met Olivia, and we still need to meet Raymond.
Okay, and so glad that didn't happen when I was actually in the middle of giving my workshop.
You're good.
Yeah. So now I'm hot spotted. Okay, Raymond.
Or Kat, did you want to go first?
Oh, Kat, I'm sorry.
Okay.
We're all just trying to figure this out together. So I'm the outgoing editor-in-chief of De Anza's Laveau's News. I started off as a reporter, pretty much like everybody else did, and then I was campus beat editor, and I was campus beat editor right as everything started shutting down. So we were in mid-production of our physical paper when the shutdown occurred, and we were writing about the potential shutdown when the shutdown occurred. So it was a very interesting end to that quarter. And then I moved into completely online as editor-in-chief in the next quarter, which was winter.
Great. Thank you. All right, Raymond, you're up.
I'm Raymond, and I am the managing editor of the Daily Children at USC, and I am currently finishing up my internship with CBS News.
Yay. Okay, and we've got two former or current or former Skyline View students here and two current or former De Anza students, Laveau's alum. Okay, so first I wanted to just kind of open it up to, and I don't want us to, we need to make sure that we don't create too much time on this, but survey you guys for what your experiences were this semester. Did you have a similar experience to mine in terms of having a hard time motivating students to write news as opposed to opinions or other things like that? And I am going to try, I've got you on grid form, so I'll try to call on you, but if you just wave at me, we'll have you unmute yourself and just quickly tell us what your experience has been. And if you prefer, you can go into the chat and say, you know, was it hard? Was it not hard? So you don't necessarily have to do it on screen right now. And we've got a lot of people who've stepped away, but help me, I'm monitoring the actual video screens right now. And Marianne, if people are putting things in the chat, if you could read those to us, that would be awesome.
Okay.
I can share my experience, Nancy.
Yeah, go ahead, tell us about it. And you guys continue right in the chat as you wish. Yeah.
Well, it was similar to yours in that people really wanted to gravitate toward feature stories
Yeah.
and opinion columns. And so I adjusted and allowed them to do that. And so we had a lot of opinion sort of columns, but it was focused on their experience during the pandemic. The biggest challenge with trying to motivate them for news was that many of them were very scared of obviously catching COVID, and
Yeah.
they're 18, 19, 20. Many of them live with their parents still, or they're back with their parents, and the parents are telling them, do not go out, do not leave the house. And so they may have been conflicted themselves in terms of, well, I'm taking a journalism class, and me telling them, yes, like you said, this is like the Olympics, this is the story of your life, but they cannot sort of do what their parents told them not to do, which is don't leave the house. So that was my challenge, was there's these amazing stories going on in your community, but mom and dad, or a parent are saying, no, don't do it, because they're not, they're in a journalism class, the parents aren't. So I thought that was a challenge. I know that I did a whole thing about how the journalism has to trump any of the concerns, because journalists every day are out covering the pandemic and they're putting themselves at risk, and you are journalists and you are trying to do what they do. And that was helpful with some, but the truth is many students also have underlying health conditions, or a family member has an underlying health condition. And so my biggest challenge was sort of respecting the fact that, hey, they have legitimate concerns, and how do we accommodate them so they can do what they need to do, but also encourage those others who may not have that same experience, but they're using it maybe as an opportunity to not seize the news and jump on the opportunity. So there's definitely a range. So like any newsroom, we got a whole bunch who were out there covering things in the community, and we got many who were sort of writing columns about their thoughts on the pandemic from home.
Thank you. Anybody else? And this panelists, you can just kind of hear what they're saying, and I'm writing down kind of the theme of it so that we can come back to it after I ask you some questions that may in and of itself answer them. Go ahead, Cindy.
Yeah, my students actually did less opinion writing than they were beforehand. One of the things that we created was a feature series called The New Normal. And so for that, they only had to interview one person. It was a one source story because it was interviewing people about how the virus was, or the shelter in place was impacting them. So they did that. And then there were probably an equivalent number of news stories, but they didn't go out and do news stories. They did them from their home via Zoom or phone or called people. Basically, we threw out the window the fact that you had to go and talk to people in person, that you had to do it via, remote, the same way we were learning through remote. So they didn't have that problem. What I did notice was that a few students, but were depressed or feeling down about the fact that they were sheltered in place, and so they lost some of their motivation. A few people, but I was surprised. I thought there'd be more opinion articles, and we had many fewer.
Yeah. All right. I want to thank you so much for sharing that, and that sounds similar to, well, the last part sounded similar to what some of my students were going through. I'm going to go ahead and ask some questions of the panelists and give them a chance to share some stuff with us. And then we'll come back to the group chat too, and see if we can address some of these things as well. It's really great that you guys are putting all of this in here. So I'm going to stop my screen share so that we can more easily see our panelists. And by the way, guys, you probably already know this, but if you put it on speaker view, gallery view, I think as a teacher is great to see my students. And when I really want to make sure that I am looking at the speaker eye to eye, I will typically put it on speaker view to make sure that I've done that, so that I'm not looking down here at someone who I'm talking to. But also for right now, it'll help you really hone in, since we've got so many people online, on who is actually speaking. Are you guys clear about how to change it to speaker view for yourself? Okay. All right. And then I just need to get out of our screen share here. Hold on. Okay. So now we're out of screen share. Yeah, I'm right about that. And I'm going to put it on speaker view for myself. Okay. So give me just one more moment. Okay, so panelists, let me go ahead and ask you some of this. I'd like to hear really quickly from each of you how news is assigned on your staff especially during COVID. How do you just even logistically make those assignments? And you can just unmute yourself and go ahead and respond. I won't call on you.
I think just for us at the Spartan Daily, our way of assigning stories really had to change, especially when COVID hit. Prior to that, we did the very like traditional roundtable, kind of asking everybody, oh, hey, we have these stories, who wants to take them? If nobody started taking them, we'd go one by one. Okay, what do you have on your plate? You don't have anything, you're taking the story. But after, like, as many of you noticed and kind of alluded to, there's been a lot of people who kind of were hit mentally with this whole pandemic, like especially with having to be sheltered in place. There's just a lot of mental health issues that were so prevalent in a lot of our reporters that we kind of had to like ease back a little bit, but at least for like the first week or so. But after that, we kind of just started knowing, like, we had to assess who was able to do what. It was unfortunate in the sense that we kind of had to like go back to the same people who we knew were reliable on doing news stories, and like just go to them and ask them personally, hey, can you take this story? But I mean, even after that, like, we kind of just noticed that tactic started working a little bit more. So to kind of like get back into the flow of things, we kind of just started doing that with everybody, even if we didn't necessarily like trust them 100% with a hard-hitting news story. We kind of just like gave them the benefit of the doubt, and like I think that really helped us, especially near the end of the semester, in terms of just like having a story and asking people like individually, like calling them up or texting them like, hey, we have this story, are you free to do it? And it was like really simple, but I mean, for us, it was at least really effective.
That idea of reaching out to reporters individually as a group. Okay.
I can kind of second what Christian
Yeah.
said. What we originally did was we would open it up to everybody, all stories. As the quarter went through, we identified certain people who were better at the news type stories than others, or if it was something time sensitive or sensitive in nature, like most of these stories were, we could either directly pitch it to somebody that we knew was a news hound, or one of the editors, so that we could ensure that it actually got published. Because I think with any new journalists, especially people who haven't done this before, it's very hard to get them across the finish line. So if there's a story that essentially would affect the paper not being published, we need to kind of have somebody to fall back on that can actually produce the piece, so that we are making a statement on issues that are coming up. But I do think it's worth, especially at the beginning of a quarter or a semester, to pitch out to everybody, because there's no way that you're going to find out who is or who is not a news hound, a newly addicted news person, if you don't give them the opportunity to stand up and take those assignments. And we did. We found a few of our reporters that were really good, really into it, learned a lot throughout a very short period of time. And we wouldn't have been able to do that if we didn't allow them the opportunity to take those pieces.
Great, thank you so much. And I'm going to skip over you for this question, since you and Christian work together, and I'll go to you, Raymond. What is happening at USC in terms of your process for how you assign stories, news stories?
Yeah, so we have our news team, they have a weekly pitch sheet that they send out to their news staff, just containing a bunch of different ideas, COVID or not, related. And we also look a lot to social media because that's where a lot of the students at USC are like posting different like things about maybe change.org petitions that they want USC administration to address. And yeah, so we have our pitch sheet, and kind of echoing what Christian and Kat said, we have like some people on our news team, they're just more dedicated to the news staff than others. So we'd usually gravitate to like reaching out to them individually first to see if they're willing to take on an extra story or two. And usually they are. So yeah, that's pretty much it.
Nancy, you're
Nancy,
muted.
you're muted.
Here, let me unmute her. Hold on. No, it says ask to unmute. There you go. She's going there. There
Okay.
you go.
All right, so sorry, somebody's running, Jess was running a lawnmower next door, and I've got a door open for my dog to get out. So, okay, so I mean, I've got questions for you guys, but some of this stuff is sort of, you know, we're going to be addressing it. You're addressing it through other questions, but I really want to hear more about how the COVID situation impacted your news stories, your news staffs, and have you guys, I mean, at all three publications, you've told us your process now. Have you guys actually been producing a lot of news? Have you seen more news that you're producing as your staffs, or are you producing fewer stories, or are you producing right about the same?
Nancy, can I jump in with something?
Yeah.
Many of the questions in the chat box have to do with finding sources. And I
Yeah.
think that's also something that stops reporting students from taking stories because they're baffled. And so what have you guys learned? That's another question. I'm sorry if I jump ahead of you, but what have you guys learned about helping reporters find sources?
That is absolutely one of the questions, and we can go there. I mean, again, this doesn't have to be super formal. So yeah, you guys, that, you know, I'm sure there's other things, but tell us in your answer too. I am curious to know if you guys have produced more news, less news, or about the same. And then, yeah, sources has been a huge problem for students. So we'd love to hear what has been the experience on your campuses.
So for the Spartan Daily, I think we definitely have had way more news than we've probably ever had before. And it's not just because of the coronavirus. I mean, we started off like the semester, you know, we had a bunch of the Black Lives Matter protests. So it's been pretty constant wave of new news stories. Because the protests, there's still so many kind of ongoing protests, especially around San Jose. And then with the coronavirus, and the thing is, I think there's definitely more news stories because the coronavirus has affected really like every part of daily life. So there are so many different angles that you could possibly take with it. So we've definitely had way more news stories than I think we've ever had before.
Okay, thank you.
Nancy, can I interject? And
Yeah.
I think really specifically, where do they go for sources? And another thing that to address is, how do you deal with lack of motivation in your staff for whatever reason? But you know, that's been asked by several people.
Yeah, well, it's the, you know, yeah, those are the questions that haunt us. Go ahead.
I think I can speak a little bit on that just because, as many of us know, we had to really change the way we do interviews over the last couple of months, whether that be via Zoom, focus more on phone calls or whatever. But one of the things that like at the Daily we found to be really we found that really worked was reaching out to people, like again on social media. One of the biggest ways that we've been getting a lot of student quotes for most of our stories has been polling out on like Instagram or Twitter, asking like a general question and then having students just DM us or like message us. And it also goes both ways with just trying to find other sources. Like I'm trying to think of a recent example in my case, but like with one of the protests that I went to, I was trying to find sources for this one specific thing that happened later at night that I wasn't there for. And I was just scouring like Twitter and found this one person who happened to be there at the exact same time of the instance that I was looking for. And I just messaged her and we got to talk and set up a phone call and everything. So like, I would really like, I would really want people to know that like, even though like you shouldn't get your information from Twitter, it's a very good way to try to get sources at least. That's what we've been doing. And
You had any problems, Christian, and also Raymond, you mentioned the social media piece too. Have you guys had any problems with verifying that the person is who they say they are?
Sometimes usually when I'll like look for somebody who's more on like if who I want to, you know, talk to, who's more of like an expert or like faculty or something along those lines, like I'll look up their names like on LinkedIn or something like that. But I haven't had like much issues really with that aspect of it.
Olivia, you have a comment about that too?
Well, as like a copy editor last semester who was like trying to verify a bunch of names, the problem that I came across a lot was that like, so we'd have people reach out through social media, but their social media handle wouldn't be their name, and you couldn't just search their name like by putting in their full name. So it was really hard to verify. But this was mostly like student sources, because most like professors or experts will have their professional name. So with student sources, it was really hard. So what we would tend to do is like, if the student, for example, was an organizer for like a Black Lives Matter protest, and we knew that they worked with like a local like NAACP chapter, you know, we might reach out to like our source with the NAACP chapter and be like, hey, we think there's someone by this name. Can you please just confirm, like, can you give us their information, or can you like confirm, we want to make sure this is the correct like spelling of their name, that this is their title, like that kind of thing.
Okay, thank you. That's concrete. Appreciate that.
Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, Kat.
I was going to say, so Lavos maintains a list of sources, your general sources, professional sources, and things like that from quarter to quarter. And what we did a lot, and I think that this is very useful when you can't just do Vox Pop stuff and you can't walk around campus, is kind of bridge to a Zoom interview. So we would email them essentially saying, when is your availability to do a Zoom interview about this? If it was something time sensitive, or that we were basically saying we're gonna publish this and you may want to say something about it, we could put that in the email to kind of push them in the direction of doing a Zoom interview. And a Zoom interview doesn't put anyone at risk. And so I think that there's a problem saying that you can't do news without physically being there. You can still do good news through Zoom. You can still get good interviews through Zoom. You're still going to have recordings of those interviews. You're still going to be able to read body language through those interviews. So instead of saying that we can't do news because we can't physically go out, I think it's important to say that there is an avenue, especially given with COVID-19. We at no point said that people had to go out and put themselves at risk. However, we said, if you're willing to do this, we'd love it. If you're going to the protest, can you cover it as a news story instead of a participant? Can you, you know, if you are an essential worker, you know, can you use that as an opportunity to get some sources that way? So it's less, you know, saying like, hey, guys, you wanted into the ball game, here's how you get into the ball game, and saying like, here's the many avenues that you can use to get news. Being creative in the way that we get sources, and being creative, just like with social media, getting creative in the way that we address the issue is paramount to the survival of any newspaper, given that we don't know when we're going to be able to get back to physical.
I'm going to
Right.
mention something else that I'm going to mention something else that you guys did, Kat, which was have students go to shared governance meetings, as we call them, you know, academic senate, student senate, whatever, and private message people in Zoom. Hi, I want to talk to you about this later, you know, et cetera. And if it's students, get their email address or their phone or whatever, and professors just to let them know I'm going to be getting a hold of you, and start the conversation in chat in that shared governance meeting, right? I thought that was brilliant of you guys.
Yeah, I think the important thing is bridging to these actual interviews, using social media, using direct chats in public meetings that are on Zoom, emailing, reaching out to people on Facebook, however you need to get in touch with people originally, and then setting up a more formal interview through Zoom if you can. It also gives you the flexibility of not having to be at a certain place at a certain time and being able to reach out to those people at any point and setting up a formal interview at a time and place that works best for them, so that you're not trying to catch them as they're running away from you, which I think is really useful.
So Cindy just brought up a great thing in the chat that I think should be a part of this discussion. And Raymond, I'd like to start with you on this part. This idea of, okay, so we've got, you know, our news stories, but we also need our photos for that stuff too, right? So how have you been handling at the Daily Trojan? Did I say it right?
Yeah.
Daily Trojan, the photojournalism piece. Cindy put it in the chat that they use a lot of Zoom screenshots. And you guys are also using Zoom screenshots. Are you prepping the interviewees on lighting or anything that might make those shots even a little bit better? What are you doing about photojournalism and news?
Yeah, so in terms of our news stories, around like once we moved to remote production, we did a lot of like profile type stories. So then usually in terms of getting photos, we'd have the writers ask their subjects if they can provide any photos. So that's always a good thing to do. Also, I'm pulling up real quick this thing that we did at GT that was like specific to like, I guess, our photo team. So
If you want
we were
to,
lucky.
yeah, you can screen share.
Or I'm just gonna drop the link here, and it's this project that we did. It's called Campus Gone Quiet, and it was just like a photo series that we did comparing like photos of the campus super packed, and then photos of like what campus looks like now with like no people at all. So it's something to look into if you guys have any students that are around campus, maybe doing some sort of similar
Yeah.
photo series like that.
Yeah, that's great. Looking at it right now. And then what have you guys done at USC around the sources part?
Yeah, so
Patrick is saying they did a lot less photography, yeah, this semester as a result, and a lot more digital art. Yeah. Anyway, sources for your team.
yeah, so just to echo what Christian was saying, using social media again, lots of our writers would be just like posting on Twitter, like, I'm writing a story about X, Y, and Z. If you know anyone or if you can provide any insight, DM me. And usually after that, they would go to more like specific like emails, because we'd have like them use their school specific emails, and that's one of the ways we can verify that they're like a USC student. And then we also have our student directory to confirm the names of students. And also just to speak on like the motivation part, because I know that was also brought up, we're super lucky at DT in that we have like a super big staff of like nearly 200 across the paper. So like our dedicated news staff is maybe like 30 to 40 people. And then like the super dedicated of the dedicated are like maybe 10. So it's just like, even before the coronavirus, it was very like difficult to get students' motivation. And I think one of the ways that we tried to get students to be more active in terms of writing for news was like, I don't know if this is like necessarily the best way of doing it, but we would like almost call them out. So like in the Slack channels for like the news specific staff, we'd be like, some of our news editors would be like, there's still some pitches that haven't been picked up. Some of you guys haven't contributed to the news section at all this semester. So please consider writing if you can. So just making sure that
Okay,
everyone
and
equally
did it work?
contributes to the paper. Yeah.
Okay, good. And any other comments on, like, you know, carrots or sticks that you had to throw out to your staff to get them to write? Christian, it looks like you're up next.
Yeah, really quickly speaking on the photography thing, and then I'll talk more about that. What one of our reporters suggested doing, which I kind of really loved, was taking photos from your car. It was one of the things that she did near like the beginning of COVID-19, was like staying in her car using zoom lenses and taking photos like that. So I think it was a really great way to, like, you know, for people who especially have like a lot of concerns of actually getting the virus, like it could be a good like kind of opportunity for them to still go out there and take photos. But I really loved Raymond's idea also. We were supposed to do something similar, of like a comparison of like the first day of school and then like how filled it usually is compared to like now how empty it is. So that's like one of our proto project ideas for fall. But speaking on like just motivating students, I'll kind of use my assistant news editor from last semester as an example, because he was like probably the best help for this. Mauricio, my assistant news editor, would always kind of like jump into the news chats, just kind of like how Raymond was talking, and kind of like not whip them into like getting back into like the spirit of things, but kind of with them. Like he would kind of just like be very blunt about it and say like, not even just like the whole spiel of like, oh, you need the news credits, you need the news credits. Like he'd really just go on to say like, look guys, like we need help. Like he'd be very blunt. And I think this kind of worked for us in a way of like humanizing like the editors. But like he would be very blunt and just saying like, look, we're like all tired. Like me and Christian, like we've been writing like more than half of like the news stories these last couple of weeks. Like we need you guys. And I think that's kind of like, one, it kind of creates more of like that family aspect of like the newsroom, but it kind of really just like, I think that's been a huge kind of issue that I've seen even just from my time at Laveau's and like here at the Daily. It's like when you're a new reporter, like first time, never stepped into a newsroom, you kind of like get this notion of like the editors are like this, like, you know, untouchable, like on a pedestal kind of group. And I don't know how like much that relates to everybody else, but like this is just from what I've seen at least. It's just like, if you really just like humanize yourself and like as editors, like, and just say like, look guys, we're students just like you guys, and we know we're getting like 2 or 3 hours of sleep a night. Like we need some help here, like rally the troops kind of thing, you know?
In addition to breaking down the barriers between the reporters and the editors for those new reporters coming in, do any of you guys create mentor-mentee situations? And has that been helpful for getting the students to step up, the new students?
For me, at Laveau's, I think one of the most important things we learned from the previous quarter to the winter quarter was the importance of developing those relationships with our reporters, and developing them as reporters and investing in them as reporters. So I tried to instill in my section editors that urge to have those sorts of one-on-one relationships with the reporters and helping them get a story to where it needs to be, because we understand that for some of them this is the first time that they've ever approached real journalism. And so being patient with them, but also helping them to get to where they need to be instead of fixing it and then posting it, which is something that when you're just trying to get news out and you're just trying to get it to look the way it needs to look, it's hard to invest that kind of time in reporting, but it pays off the next quarter, because then you end up having better reporters and potentially editors if you do it. And then for my editors as well, just like Christian was saying, a lot of people were depressed, you know, and dealing with exhaustion associated with protests, exhaustion from being an essential worker, these are not people who are journalists full time, they're students, and they're learning how to do journalism, which I think is extremely valuable, but there also has to be an understanding that they are students, and also that their lives outside of the classroom can also be incredibly exhausting. So even with my editors, I had editors that had to take time off due to concerns about their F1 status, concerns about their health, concerns about the protests and the exhaustion of seeing people murdered, you know, a lot, all day, every day. So there's a whole host of things that are important to notice, not just the production of news, but also learning how to, like Christian said, humanize yourself, and humanize your editors and humanize your reporters, and that in doing so, they won't quit. They won't quit and they won't break down. They come back. They take a few days, they recharge, they come back better, and they thank you for the time. Otherwise, you're going to have people dropping like flies. And I think it's important to keep that in mind as we're trying to develop our reporters.
Thank you. And I actually do want to do a little bit of a deeper dive into that, in the sense that I think for all of our classes, but also, you know, and actually maybe less so in our newsrooms, but there too, probably all of us have experienced as teachers this semester, the students who just sort of, they just floated away once we moved to, you know, to remote learning. And I'm wondering if that has happened on your staffs, especially given everything that they may be emotionally going through. And did most of them come back of their own accord? And those who kind of slipped away, were you able to reach them? Did you guys do anything? And Olivia, let's start with you for this one.
So, I mean, I think it became pretty apparent, like, you know, halfway through the semester, you know, who was really dedicated to this and who, like, just occasionally showed up to class, didn't really take an interest in what was going on. I think what was different about going online was that, and what was different for me about going to the Spartan Daily versus going to Skyline was that at Skyline, you know, like the writers will stay and hang out during production, whereas you know, in the newsrooms on production night, it's usually just the editors at the Spartan Daily. And so when we went online and we were transitioning the old staff into the new staff, we had like a Zoom hangout because we wanted to make sure that everyone felt like they were a part of this, that everyone put in the work and the effort. And with writers too, we're planning like some Zoom activities with them, because it's really weird, because, you know, newsrooms, you feel like you're part of a community, but when everything is online, everything feels like amorphous and those connections don't feel so secure. So we're going to really put in some work over Zoom, and definitely keep a Zoom link open during production so writers can hang out, they can ask questions of editors, they can get a feel for the process, just to make them a little bit more comfortable, and so that they can see how their story goes into the final product.
I'm actually really glad you just said that, because that was one of the things I suggested in the previous workshop. So I'll share the workshop with you too, because it might give you some ideas for that. Yeah, Zoom pizza parties. I think Cindy has added a really important question. And what she said was, how has the support that you guys as the editorial team, as the, you know, editors, what has changed from what you need from advisors in terms of support?
I think for me it was understanding, and I'm sure Cecilia could talk to this, but an understanding of the kind of situation that we're in. I think at the beginning of the quarter we were worried that we weren't going to be able to produce anything, just because it was so hard. We went from focusing honestly on the physical paper and the layout of the physical paper, to having to essentially grow the social media within that quarter. And we were all concerned that no sources were going to return to anybody, that no one would ever go out of their their home for any reason. And I mean, understanding that getting something produced is a win in and of itself helped me relax enough that we ended up getting a ton of things produced. You know, nothing was perfect, but I honestly think that we did pretty well considering the situation. And I wouldn't have felt comfortable. I think I would have gotten a lot more overwhelmed, and I think my editors and my reporters would have got more overwhelmed if the original expectation that came from Cecilia was that we were going to recreate a physical paper online. We were going to keep the rigid production schedule that we had, and we had to produce X amount of stories by X amount of time. I think because we didn't do that, we revved up really well. And when we started producing in mass. So I think that to me was one of the most helpful things.
Great. And Cecilia, you look like you wanted to respond to that as well.
No, I just wanted to clap because
Oh, that was the clap. Right? Okay.
no, just another thing is understanding it takes longer to get the reporters up to speed when there's no class. I mean, there's the Zoom class online, which you cannot teach like a physical class at all. And then there's a content in Canvas, which I always have tried to minimize because really I want to give them grades for reporting. But I had to, and I even have changed my grading scheme a little bit so that the stuff they do in Canvas, the learning activities are worth a little more and the reporting a little less. I mean, it's still way over half for the reporting, but it takes a long time to get the new reporters up to speed, that's for sure. And great one-on-ones with the editors and yeah. And I've just, a little brag, we had 3 people apply for news editor for the fall. So, and all 3 of them new reporters who are coming back in the fall wanting to be news editor. They can't all be news editor, but yeah.
That's exciting. All right, so to the other 3 panelists, how about you in terms of this? This support that we can, as advisors, give you, how has that changed? And you can just unmute yourself if you have an answer for that. Go ahead, Christian.
Oh, the T. Okay, so pretty much, I think there's like.
This is being recorded, Christian, just okay, but we won't share it with the outside too far. Go ahead.
I mean, not even speaking ill, like, because I really do appreciate what our advisors have done over at the Daily. I think one of the biggest things that like the editors have complained about last semester were like 2 main things. One, the first is like overall just like being more critical about giving us feedback. I think especially with like all the different stories that we were publishing, it was really just kind of like we knew we were doing good work, but like at the same time we would also want our advisors to like be a little bit more critical about, especially like toward like the new reporters. Like for example, we would have like some reporters who we would basically like have to rewrite their entire stories, and even then like they were just barely passable, and like the advisors would at most critique them on like grammar or like little AP style, like, oh, there's supposed to be like a hyphen there or a M dash or something, you know, when it's like, well, why don't you like go more in depth about how we could have taken this a different angle, or how the angle we took might have been like, you know, a little bit too vague or something like that. Like, I think especially with all the COVID stories, like, I think it's a lot more useful for us as reporters to know what other kind of lanes we could have approached this specific angle or this specific problem, right?
So
And
may I
this,
ask you a point of clarification for that?
yeah,
Talking about post the story being published, having the advisor come in and be more
yeah,
deliberate with the type of feedback that they're giving during this time,
yeah,
which
exactly.
benefit the stories presumably down the line.
Yeah, exactly. Because like,
When you train.
exactly, because then the reporter thinks that they did a spectacular job when it was like they could have done a lot better, you know?
Yeah.
And then the second thing I would say that the advisors could have helped us out more last semester, especially, was like, I think, and this might come off a little bit mean, but like being a little bit more harsh with the reporters in terms of like grading. And like I said, I know it might come off as a little harsh because like, of course, people had like mental health issues and, you know, having to move back to their hometowns and everything like that. I just think that like a lot of people, as soon as COVID hit, they got into like this space where they kind of just thought that they could not do anything and it would be fine. Like they wouldn't get any repercussions with their grades or anything like that. And like I kind of just wish that like, you know, we as like the editors had to do all the rallying ourselves. We had to be the ones that said, look guys, this is like the time to go. Like this is your opportunity to get out there on the field and, you know, take these spectacular photos that nobody else would be able to do and report on these things that are genuinely affecting students, right? And like that just wasn't there at the advisors. And I don't know if like, you know, for other students, maybe like, you know, what the teacher says or what the advisor says doesn't matter as much as what like the editor in chief or like the other editors say, but I think it kind of does. I think that like the advisors are like, you know, kind of one of those people with not power, but like who are respected as well, like in the newsroom. And like I think that if our advisors would have stepped up a little bit and just like helped in rallying the troops, so to say, I think it would have helped us out a lot more.
And I see a comment from Raymond here. Thank you so much for that. And it makes me think of something, and then I'm going to ask you, Raymond, to follow up on this. For faculty, if you could possibly put into the group chat, it occurs to me what Christian's saying relies a lot on the editors staying motivated. But did any of you as advisors have problems with your EICs being motivated? Was that an issue, like where they were slammed with mental health issues or motivation issues because of what was going on, or even background issues, their home was just overwhelming for them or whatever? So I'll ask for that, you know, through the chat. And then Raymond, you said you completely agree with Christian and that more in-depth critiques help your news editors and the reporting becomes better. Do you want to follow up anything else on that?
Yeah, I just think that if we have more discussions in terms of like, I guess, postmortems, like after issues come out, just talking not only like what looks good on the page, but like what worked well for like each story in terms like the reporting timeline, the workflow, like did this get to copy too late? Did this lay out correctly? Just like more in-depth discussions, like maybe not only just from the advisors, but like from the individual staffers that had a stake in each story, just talking about what worked well and what didn't work well in terms of getting the story to print, and then learning from those experiences and moving on.
Yeah. And do you guys ever risk, do you feel at all fearful of the situation of having editors who you know, cover all of these things with their reporters and critique, and then sometimes hurting the feelings of their less senior staff members? Like, has that been a problem in terms of like coming on too hard at all for your students?
Oh, I was
Does
Yeah,
that
if
make
you wanted to
sense?
say something, you can go ahead.
gonna say I don't
Am I
think
frozen?
you're getting frozen.
Shoot.
I think for me,
Guys, I think I'm frozen. Am I?
yes.
You are for me.
Not for me or not.
I think for me and for my editors, we had an understanding that it was an investment in the reporter to give them good critique, kind of like what Raymond was saying. If you don't give them a holistic critique, you honestly aren't trying to make them reporters. You're just trying to get whatever they gave you and send it out. If you're trying to invest in them as a reporter, you have to say, okay, congratulations, you figured out how to put a comma in quotes. Very proud of you. However, unfortunately, you didn't get any sources. The quotes that you're using are poor. Your transitions don't make sense. Your quote stacking, the story as a whole has no direction. Those are things that are really important for them to know if you care about them as reporters. And it doesn't come from a place of, this is terrible, boo you. It comes from a place of, I could see this being a good story. Here's my concerns. List them out specifically and have a conversation about it. And if they have pushback, that's when you have the teachable moments where you say, this is why we do it this way. This is why it makes more sense not to put, two quotes right next to each other. Then it's no longer a story that you're writing. You're just essentially telling them what they said. And having that conversation with them. I can't tell you how many times I use the term lonely comma to explain why you can't put a comma outside of quotations, but these are the types of conversations that you have to have. And it comes out of a place of caring about them. And sometimes caring about the development of your reporter means that you're having these types of conversations. It's when you say, oh, don't worry, I'll clean it up, that you're dismissing them, and that you're saying that you don't actually care at all about their development. You're just trying to produce. Yeah, that's just my take on it.
Okay, and you got a lot of love from your fellow panelists on that, by the way. All right, you guys, that we are at the top of the hour, and I really want to thank all 4 panelists. Thank you so much for sharing what you guys do. Yeah, and don't be too surprised if we perhaps contact you again. We're going to be doing our regional conference, and so it was really helpful to hear boots on the ground, what you guys are going through. And everybody, thank you so much for joining us today for these 2 hours. And Marianne or Cecilia, do you want to say anything? You're muted. Oh, I thought I was, okay, yeah.
No, I'm good. If you are not going to come tomorrow, I will be emailing out an exit survey, because I don't know about you guys, but I thought this was awesome. We should have been doing this all along. If we where was Zoom before? Judy's shaking her head, I can see. This is the future, guys, and I think that we can use this. Josh had some great ideas. I wrote down a ton of ideas, and I think I'll collect those in a survey, and then we can kind of regroup and figure out how to address those. We also have many experts within our ranks that I think can, do what we did today. I mean, I didn't do it today. I just kind of facilitated, but, you guys can lead one of these training sessions. Everybody's an expert in something. And that's all I have to say, I guess. Thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate that. I couldn't sleep all night because I was so nervous. I kept thinking, what's going to go wrong?
It was great. Thank you so much. And Nancy was today, and wow, you were going nonstop for 2 hours. Thank you very much. And especially the students, call upon the alumni, and there you are. Thank you so much. Tomorrow, we'll have a little more chance to talk to each other, at least during my portion. And I have a question. Do we have Nancy's Google Slides going out?
Yeah, so a couple of things I just want to say is in the chat, you guys, you'll see that the panelists are generously offering their email if you want to reach out to them with any specific questions. They've offered that, and Olivia has also pointed out that there is a JACC Slack channel to connect newsrooms, although she's not sure how active it is. And yes, Jessica, I'm going to provide a list of tutorials on YouTube for some of those different tools. The slideshow itself, everything will be available. Marianne is going to help us organize that in a Google Doc or Google folder.
Thank you.
Okay, you guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, so bye, Jana. And yeah, look, you know, there's even a chat transcript. So we'll save all of this. Okay, so we'll see you guys tomorrow. And Marianne, since you're at the helm, if you could just, you'll be the person, I guess, who gets the audio version, the video version, and the chat transcript. So
I sure will.
okay.
And I'll make sure that the Google Doc is available, and I'll also put a little note in about, we've kind of been talking about, you know, kind of sharing resources. So this is a great start right now to maybe kickstart that a little bit.